There's a phrase spoken by an anonymous person close to Qatar's government that was published by the Financial Times on Monday morning. A phrase that contains more strategic honesty than anything said by any American official, any Israeli general, or any Gulf foreign minister since Operation Epic Fury began, and it describes, in 9 words, exactly what Qatar has decided to do to end this war. The phrase is this: a cascade of economic harm. A production halt would endanger every region, as Qatar Energy provides critical energy to over 120 countries, said one person close to Qatar's decision, adding that there would be a cascade of economic harm. Not a warning, not a threat, a description. This person, speaking to the Financial Times, is not saying the production halt might cause harm. They are saying it will cause a cascade, the specific engineering term for a failure that propagates through a system in sequence, where each stage of failure triggers the next, and the next, and the next, until the system reaches a state that cannot be reversed by any single intervention. Qatar shut its LNG production, knowing exactly what cascade it would start, knowing that European gas prices would surge 54% within the morning, knowing that Asian LNG benchmarks would jump 39% by afternoon, knowing that every German factory, every French power station, every Italian steel mill, every South Korean petrochemical plant that depends on Qatari LNG supply would receive an emergency alert from its energy procurement desk within hours of the announcement. Knowing all of that, and shutting the production anyway, Qatar shut LNG production at the world's largest export facility after it was targeted in an Iranian drone attack, sending European gas prices surging as much as 54%. Qatar Energy's Ras Laffan plant covers about a fifth of global liquefied natural gas supply, and the unprecedented halt now threatens energy security and rattled global markets. Unprecedented. Bloomberg used that word Monday morning. Not historically significant, not alarming. Unprecedented, meaning no event in the entire history of global LNG markets, including the 1973 oil embargo, including the 2019 Abqaiq attack, including the 2022 Russian pipeline shutoff that nearly deindustrialized Germany, has produced the simultaneous halting of 20% of global LNG supply in a single morning. And the source document today identifies something that none of the financial coverage has yet said explicitly. Qatar is not simply a victim of Iranian drones. Qatar has made a decision. The LNG shutdown is not merely a response to infrastructure damage. It is a weapon. The one weapon that a country with no air force capable of stopping Iran, no missile stockpile large enough to matter, and no diplomatic channel left to Washington has remaining. Qatar cannot stop the war with jets. It cannot stop the war with phone calls. But it can make the cascade so economically unbearable for Europe, for Japan, for South Korea, for China, that those governments stop the war for it. Iran knows exactly what it's doing by attacking the Gulf countries, said Rob Geist-Pinfold, lecturer in defense studies at King's College London. These countries have less of an appetite for a fight because, at the end of the day, this is not their war. So Iran is banking that they will want a ceasefire as soon as possible, that they will be pressuring the Trump administration. This is not their war. 5 words from a King's College London defense analyst that describe the entire strategic position of every Gulf state that is absorbing Iranian missiles in exchange for hosting American bases that America used to kill Iran's supreme leader. This is not their war. And every hour of continued American operation is another hour of drone strikes on refineries, LNG terminals, hotels, ports, and airports in countries that had nothing to vote on when Trump and Netanyahu made their decision. Qatar's LNG shutdown is the economic equivalent of a hostage situation. Except the hostage is not a person. The hostage is European industrial output, and the demand is not ransom. The demand is, make America stop. The source document today asks the question that every energy economist in Europe woke up asking on Monday morning, and whose answer explains why the Qatar energy shutdown is categorically different from every previous energy supply disruption in the modern era. If Qatar's LNG is gone and Russian pipelines are sanctioned, where does Europe's gas come from? LNG buyers, such as China, Japan, and South Korea, will be affected by shutoff in Qatari supply if the shutoff lasts more than a day or two, said Gregory Brew, senior analyst with Eurasia Group. Europe has relatively low natural gas inventories right now. It's coming out of the winter months. Coming out of winter months with below 30% storage. That is the European gas inventory position on the morning of Qatar Energy's shutdown. The buffer that should have accumulated through the mild winter heating season is not there, and the season is not yet warm enough for industrial demand to fall. Every European steel mill, chemical plant, fertilizer producer, and a glass manufacturer that runs on gas is running right now, in early March, at full demand, drawing from reserves that are already 10 percentage points below last year's level at the same date. Now take 20% of global LNG supply offline. Now add the Strait of Hormuz conditionally closed, with 200 vessels anchored at its entrance, and Maersk having suspended all transits of both Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb simultaneously. Analysts warned that a prolonged loss of natural gas supplies from the Middle East could reach 120 billion cubic meters a year, greater than the total that Europe lost when Russia shut off pipelines in the wake of its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The drop in Russia gas pipeline supplies in 2022 was around 80 billion cubic meters, said Anne-Sophie Corbeau at Columbia University's Center on Global Energy Policy. This is a bigger volume, but crucially, it obviously depends on how long this lasts. Bigger than what Russia did in 2022. The Columbia University energy policy researcher is saying, with careful academic precision, that the potential loss volume from the Middle East shutdown exceeds the Russia crisis that sent European gas prices to 340 euros per megawatt hour in August 2022. The crisis that forced Germany to restart coal plants it had closed for climate reasons, that forced France to cut industrial production, that pushed European households to choose between heating and eating across the winter of 2022-2023. That crisis is the comparison point, and the Columbia researcher is saying this one is larger. Now add the dimension that makes this crisis structurally different from 2022. In 2022, Russia cut supply as a retaliatory measure, and the world's LNG market, while stressed, was not simultaneously shut down at its largest production facility. Other suppliers, Norway, the United States, Trinidad, Australia, could increase output or redirect cargoes. Today, the American LNG market is running at 100% capacity. There is no spare American production to redirect. We're maxed out, said Tom Singh, assistant professor of energy finance at Texas Christian University. You can't just boost LNG production from its current levels if you're already running at 100% in the United States. We're waiting on additional projects to be constructed. America is maxed out. The country whose president launched this war, the country that produces the world's largest volume of LNG, and whose Secretary of State just admitted it can manufacture 6 to 7 interceptor missiles per month, cannot provide Europe with replacement gas supply because its own export terminals are already operating at full capacity. The cascade that Qatar's anonymous spokesperson described to the Financial Times is not a theoretical future scenario. It is a present tense arithmetic problem with no solution available from the American side of the alliance that started the war. Shell, ExxonMobil, Total Energies, and ConocoPhillips are all investors in Qatar's LNG facilities. Shell, ExxonMobil, Total Energies, ConocoPhillips. 4 of the world's largest energy companies have billions of dollars in production equity sitting idle at Ras Laffan right now, not because of Iranian missiles, but because Qatar Energy made a decision to halt all production following infrastructure damage that, according to Qatar's own defense ministry, came from 2 drones. 2 drones, one hitting a water tank at a power plant in Misaid, one hitting an energy facility at Ras Laffan. The physical damage was assessed, and the production was halted anyway. Because the decision was not about physical damage, it was about the cascade. There is an industrial chain, a sequence of manufacturing dependencies that connects a Qatari gas molecule to a loaf of bread on a supermarket shelf in Berlin, that most people never think about until it breaks. It is breaking right now, on Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026, and the speed at which it breaks will determine how long this war lasts, more reliably than any missile count, any interceptor stockpile assessment, or any diplomatic communique from any intermediary country. The chain works like this. Natural gas heats industrial furnaces. Those furnaces produce steel. Steel makes the machinery that produces fertilizer. Fertilizer grows food. Gas also produces ammonia directly, the primary input for nitrogen fertilizer. When gas prices surge 54% in a single morning, the cost of producing ammonia spikes immediately. Within weeks, the cost of nitrogen fertilizer spikes. Within months, the cost of planting the spring crop spikes. By summer, the food price cascade that started from a drone strike on a water tank in Misaid has reached the retail price of bread in Germany, of pasta in Italy, of cooking oil in Poland. You are going to have an impact on gas prices. You're going to have an impact on heating bills. You're going to have an impact on electricity bills, said Anne-Sophie Corbeau. Columbia University's Center on Global Energy Policy. Gas prices, heating bills, electricity bills. 3 categories of household expense that touch every European family. Not the wealthiest family, not the family with solar panels and a heat pump, but every family in every apartment in every city in every country that runs on gas heat and gas-powered electricity, rising simultaneously, measurably, visibly, because 2 Iranian drones found 2 facilities in Qatar, and Qatar Energy made a decision. Now consider what this means for the European governments that are currently watching their energy benchmarks surge, and their populations beginning to calculate what their next utility bill will look like. These are the same governments whose prime ministers condemned the American-Israeli strikes in varying degrees of diplomatic language. Britain saying it doesn't believe in regime change from the skies, France calling for maximum restraint, Germany debating. These are governments whose populations already gave them a political mandate based on energy security and economic stability. These are governments facing elections, facing industrial lobbying, facing trade union pressure, and now facing a 54% gas price spike that their populations will experience as a personal financial injury within weeks. Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke separately on Monday with UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Qatar's Emir Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. The Kremlin said Putin and the Qatari Emir voiced concern about the conflict widening and drawing in third countries and expressed hope for a rapid de-escalation of hostilities. Putin called the Qatar Emir personally on Monday, not through intermediaries, not through the UN Security Council. Putin called Emir Tamim directly. The leader of the country whose gas production has just shut down and whose LNG shutdown has sent European prices surging to levels that make Russian pipeline gas, at whatever terms Moscow offers, more economically attractive than any alternative available in the market. Putin expressed hope for rapid de-escalation. What Putin means by rapid de-escalation is Europe calls Moscow, Moscow provides gas, American strategic leverage over European energy policy ends, the post-Ukraine energy realignment reverses in a single week, and Russia emerges from this war, a war it did not start and was not a formal party to, as the indispensable energy partner of a continent that spent 3 years trying to become independent of it. Qatar already has Iran's equivalent gas reserves. The source document makes this point with brutal simplicity. Iran has gas. Qatar has gas. The difference is that Qatar built Ras Laffan and sold its gas to the world and used those revenues to build towers and airports and football stadiums and a global diplomatic reputation. And now, in 1 week, every building in that reputation is smoking. Every terminal is idle, and every foreign executive who was planning to relocate their regional headquarters to Doha is reconsidering. The tourism is gone. The reputation is gone. The property prices are falling. The LNG revenue is halted. The early warning radar that cost $500 million is rubble. The Al Udeid air base that Qatar built and maintained and kept operational at enormous political cost to its relationship with Iran, the base which American jets used to help kill Iran's supreme leader, is now the reason Qatar is being destroyed. Qatar did not choose this war. Qatar hosted the American base, and the war chose Qatar. The cascade that person described to the Financial Times is not just an economic cascade. It is a legitimacy cascade, a sequence of failures in the political justification for the American alliance system in the Gulf that propagates through every country on the list of territories struck in 72 hours. When Bahrain's hospitals are full and Qatar's LNG is shut, and Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura is halted and the UAE's data centers are offline, and European gas is up 54%. The question every population in every one of those countries is asking its government is the same question Qatar's anonymous spokesperson answered on Monday morning. Was hosting the American base worth this cascade? Share this video to every contact you have right now. Qatar shut 20% of global LNG supply, not just from damage, but as a deliberate weapon to pressure Europe to pressure Trump. European gas is up 54%. America's LNG terminals are maxed out. There's no replacement supply. The loss volume is bigger than what Russia did in 2022. Putin called the Qatari Emir personally. And the cascade, from gas prices to electricity bills to fertilizer to food, has already begun.